no time to talk. Music loud and women want to be kicked around. Since I was born and it's alright.
And welcome back to the show. It's 6:33 on this Wednesday edition of Lance Roberts Show. You know, it's so cold that no, don't go there. Because we're going to start talking about all kinds of things we can't say on the air. But yeah, it's just that cold. But it was interesting because just recently the police in where was this real quick?
Illinois, Chicago?
Yeah, Illinois.
Someplace north.
So, exactly. I was just trying to find the actual location. It's but it's in Chicago. Actually just outside of Chicago. Oh, it was McLean Police Department.
Okay.
That's where it was. They recently shared on their Facebook page that that it's so cold, and this is really when we're talking about extreme weather conditions, as we said earlier in the show today. We're talking about wind chills in the negative 40s to as much as negative 80. That's how cold this is. But the McLean Police Department shared a video saying, due to the extreme cold weather, all criminal activity, and you have to love this, acts of stupidity and foolishness have been canceled.
Acts of stupidity
and foolishness have been canceled. Even Elsa has been placed under arrest with no bond until further notice. So they actually had a young woman dressed up as the Queen of Arendelle from the Disney movie Frozen. They arrested her, handcuffed her with pink handcuffs, put her in a police car. So I don't know if that's actually going to solve the problem of the cold weather, but at least they're having a little bit of fun with it in the process. So you got to do something, right?
There's nothing fun about cold weather.
Well, I was, was talking. So Michael Lebowitz, who we have on the show on a regular basis, he lives up in Maryland.
He's frozen in Maryland this morning.
And I asked him, I said, so first of all, the cost of living in Maryland, D.C. is not cheap.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was talking to him. I was like, you should just move to Texas because it'd be easier for us to work together.
Well, no, it's Texas.
And So A1, it's Texas, and A2, it'd be easier to work. But and he's like, oh, my wife will never go for that. I said, do you really think about this for a second? First of all, your wife could move to Texas. Y'all could have a house twice as big as you currently have, and a maid, and still save money every month, and you're not shoveling snow.
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, she'll never move. I go, you didn't ask her. So, I think that's going to be the big thing.
He just didn't want to have to pack up his house.
I think that's the bigger issue.
And he'd lose his cool basement where he broadcasts.
This is true.
But we could make up for that down here.
We can't give him a basement, though.
We could put him downstairs here.
No, that's true. But anyway, so they were having a bit of fun with this because obviously extremely cold. So I was just talking about before the break about baby boomers. And I thought this was interesting because there was an article out yesterday, and this was from the University of Alabama. And roll tide. So when it comes to diversity in the workplace, there's a lot has changed. And this is according to the professor that she's the department chairperson of communication at University of Alabama. So she said diversity has changed not only with technologies, but also world events. Younger workers grew up witnessing a lot of social movements, things like, Black Lives Matter, Occupy Wall Street. They grew up watching these things. And of course, remember that most millennials currently never saw a bear market until they were 18. And 18 was where they really kind of saw the bear market, but not from a standpoint of actually being involved in it. They saw the bear market in terms of what it did to their parents. Now, I want you to think about this for a second because it says a lot about what we're seeing in the social movements in the country today. Why is it that we have a very socialist-leaning person, the youngest, by the way, elected to Congress? Talking about Ocasio-Cortez, right? Very socialist nature. How did somebody like that, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, I'm just saying that mindset get elected to Congress? That would be unheard of, 2 or 3 decades ago.
Well, her beliefs are reflective of the voting populace that put her in office.
And that voting populace is a lot of the people that saw either A, went through the financial crisis and were financially devastated by it, and so they want something different.
Safety net.
safety net, right? We want government to pay for everything. And there was a great line out the other day that says, those that don't have demand, right? So they're demanding for the government to take care of all these other problems. And we saw this during, you remember, when Obama was elected to office in 2009. The young woman at the election, she was like screaming and crying, and she's like, oh, this is so great. I won't have to pay my car note anymore. I won't have to pay for my house. It'll all be taken care of. And they interviewed her about 8 years later, and she's like, well, none of that ever happened. Surprise. That's not what government's supposed to do. But this is the belief that people have. And so think about these millennials. They saw what happened to their parents during their financial crisis, and they saw the devastation of what happened with Wall Street and the impacts of the mortgage loans and all these type of things. And so they want something that's their reference point for voting, right? So that's the reference point for the failure of capitalism. Capitalism is what caused the crisis in 2008. It was the greed, it was the corporations, it was the wealthy. That's what caused the crisis, right? Well, the answer is really no. What it was the stupidity of borrowers that were all trying to buy houses they couldn't afford. That's what led to the problem. And we haven't really changed that. Now, the issue becomes the structure of this mentality moving forward. Now, all these millennials have now come up with the idea that they all have to go to college. So we're watching $1.4 trillion worth of student loan debt. It's estimated right now that because of student loan debts, nearly 400,000 people can't buy homes because of the student loan debt. So there's 400,000 homes that can't be sold because the millennials can't afford them because of the student loan debt, right? That's restricting their ability. So now there's this anger about the student loan debt that millennials took on that they now can't afford to pay because they can't get the job to pay enough to pay off the loans. So they got these degrees that don't pay enough to pay off the loans that they took out to get these degrees, because they were promised that if they got a college degree, they'd all be able to make, all this money. And that's not been the case. So for the baby boomers, though, the other problem becomes is that baby boomers haven't saved up enough money either, because they went through two major bear markets. They went through the crash in 2000. They went through the financial crisis in 2008. This whole buy and hold mentality of just riding the markets up and down doesn't work. They figured that out, and it devastated a lot of their capital. So they don't have the money. Whatever savings they had, they no longer have those savings to retire on. So now they're all having to look to retire later in life because simply there is no ability to get there, right? So that they're depending on Social Security. That's not enough to make ends meet. And so they don't have the savings to make the adjustment. The other problem is that a lot of baby boomers now, as they're looking to approach retirement, can't retire because why? Their millennial kids have come back home to live with them because they have all the student loan debt. And 40% of millennials have now gone back home to live with parents because they can't get a job that pays enough to allow them to support themselves. So this has a lot of impact to do with the overall economy. We take a look at the labor force participation rate of those between the ages of 16 and 54. Now, if you're between the ages of 16 and 54, if you're not in school, you should be working, right? You're of that age. And particularly if you're in the 25 to 54 age bracket, you should definitely be working. But the 16 to 54 age bracket, the labor force participation rate is barely, and I mean just barely, higher than it was at the nadir of the financial crisis low in that labor force participation rate. So in other words, while we've had these great job numbers over the course of the last couple of years, it's been a function of an increasing population. We're employing just enough to offset the demand increase from the population growth. And that is going to be impactful, longer term, because we have this demographic issue. We have all these baby boomers that are moving into retirement. They're all having to postpone retirement to work longer. The average right now age of retirement is starting to shift up from 65 to 70 to 72 to 75. And that retirement age is getting pushed out. And again, part of the reason, we said this earlier, is from a good standpoint. People are wanting to work longer because they enjoy what they do, or they're taking, new jobs because we're all living longer. We're healthier at an older age. We're not ready to retire. But the reality is that as we push that retirement age out, the problem for the millennial generation is that they're supposed to be taking over the jobs as people retire and leave the workforce. That opens up those jobs for the next generation to come up. But the fact that we're now all working longer is keeping that finite number of, and there is a finite number of jobs, keeping that finite number of jobs much more constricted, making it tougher for millennials to enter the workforce. Take a quick break. We're going to come back. I got a couple of funny stories for you, and we'll also get you the headlines for the day as we get ready to open up the trading day of the markets and, of course, get your business day underway. Don't go away. We'll be right back on the Lance Roberts Show right here on the Voice of Texas. Be right back.
Get daily investment news you can use, delivered at the speed of the internet. Sign up for Lance's newsletter now at lancerobertshow.com.